Hi crafty friends, it's Diane the Creative Inkster, and today in this video we are going to look at our embossing folders. Do you have any of these? These are from Stampin' Up. They're all current. They're all 3D, but this does not only need to be done with 3D. Those are the ones that I chose. So I want to show you 4 different techniques to use with your embossing folders. Let's get started. We're going to do the first one with some old olive cardstock and 2 embossing folders. This is called double embossing. So what you're going to do is pull your embossing machine in, whatever that is that you have, and whatever sandwich you need to work with your specific embossing folders that you've chosen. And on the first one, the busier one, if you will, I am going to emboss first. This is the Fern 3D. And I love this one because it really doesn't matter if I don't get it lined up straight because it's all these fern patterns all over. Perfect for me. All right, let's pop this in, stick our plate on top, run it through. Apologies for the shakiness. It just happens because I'm on the same table with the camera. Here we go. So we have a beautifully embossed piece of cardstock. Now we're going to take a second embossing folder. It has a similar idea of pattern with it. And guess if you can, what you think might happen. Well, it's going to get squished, let's face it, right? It's going to squish a little bit because we've already embossed a side of it. But we are now going to add another pattern. So I've seen this done with dots and then floral images. So I'm trying 2 leafy images here. We'll see what happens. See what we think. For sure, I will be using the panel for something. You can be rest assured. All right, so what our result was is our fern that went through first is a little more squished into the paper, but you can still see it. It's a light embossing. And then we have our beautiful leaf fall images coming up there. So I can cut this down and make it into a card. So that's double embossing, using 2 different embossing folders on 1 piece of cardstock. The next one is, I'm going to do on white, and I'm going to use the sweet citrus. So let me move this out the way, because I need to do a little work first. We're going to grab some messy paper to put down, because this is a bit of a messy one. We're going to emboss it first, and then we're going to add some color. So you can do this 2 ways. You can actually take your ink, this is Daffodil Delight, and your blending brush or blending medium, and you can add the ink directly to your embossing folder. I suggest putting it on the top and the bottom, and then that way you will be able to use the embossed or debossed side, or you can emboss it and then go ahead and add your ink to it. So since I don't do it the other way often, that's what we'll do. So we're going to add some ink first to our embossing folder. Now we're using Stampin' Up classic ink, which is perfect for this because it is water-based. And so if we don't like it, if we're not happy with the result, then we can just go ahead and redo it, and we can wash our embossing folder off in the sink with just plain water. If you were to use a pigment type ink, you would end up probably leaving color behind on your embossing folder. You can probably get it clean. It just may stain it. So just a little bit of a word to the wise on that one. So I'm not even worried if I don't get it everywhere, because I would cut this panel down anyway. All right, we've got ink all over. Close our ink pad, pop that out of the way. Pull our Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine back in. We'll slide the paper down on top of it. Now I also picked one here that it really doesn't matter if I don't get it perfectly straight. It doesn't have a perfect up and down pattern. We're going to run it through, and it's going to sandwich that ink from both sides onto the paper. So we're just having some fun and playing here. So this is the debossed side, the recessed side, and this is the embossed side. So if you used a darker ink, if you used it on different colored cards, different color of cardstock, you would get a different result. Now I can just take this right to the sink, run water over it, and it'll be dry in no time. If you feel the color isn't rich enough and you want to add more, this is the other way to do it, is to run it through your embossing folder first on plain cardstock, and then go over top with your blending medium. Now you need to be a little careful if you don't want to get it into the recessed parts, and that just takes a little bit of work and positioning. But if you really aren't too concerned about that, you can go ahead and just go hog wild and go right over top like this. And then in some cases, you might end up with a little bit of the ink in the white spots. And this is the debossed side. So this is definitely going to have some in the white spots because it's the recessed part that is getting the ink applied. So ideas, things you can do. Next one is kind of similar. I grabbed some ink that I had in a spritzer bottle. I honestly don't know what color of pink this is. It's been kicking around for a while. It's just, I think it's just water. Take a little smell. Yeah, I think it's just water in there and the ink re-inker. And we are going to spritz directly onto our embossing folder. So let's open this up a little bit. That was me testing to see what color the pink was. All right, so we're going to spritz it and hold this away, a little bit away from my embossing folder. And I'm just going to give it a little, whoops, and try to get a better coverage. And I think it's going to be a pretty dark pink. And then we can take our piece of white or whatever colored cardstock you'd like. And I know this is a thinner embossing folder. It's called Splatters. And it's thinner this way than the typical one. But it's okay because my piece of white that I've got in there, I'm just going to trim it down when I'm ready to use these to make some cards. In this video, I won't be showing you how to make the cards. I'm just showing you the ways to use your embossing folders. Let's see how this turned out. There we go. A little blotchy, but I'm sure there's something we can do with it. I feel like this was a great one to work with the spritzing because it's got all those non-perfectly pieced and placed apart pieces. Like, say on this one, you'd really want them to look a little bit more like lemons or oranges. All right, so we can play with that one afterward. And my last one for showing you today is with some pattern paper. So I specifically chose these swans from the Delightfully Eclectic paper, which gives a lot of open space because I was hoping that would help the embossing folder show up a little bit better. If you have a super busy pattern, then you may not see your embossing quite as fully. So this piece of paper is just a little bit longer than my embossing folder. That's okay. We're going to trim it down. So let's stick that in, run it through, and see what it turns out to be. That's the fun part of playing with this. Playing with your products and figuring out what it's going to look like. So here we go. So we've added some beautiful dots to our pattern paper. I've also seen where people have taken some plain cardstock and washi tape, not just the thin washi tapes that we've typically used and sold, but thicker and wider ones or strips of it, and laying that down on your cardstock and then going ahead and embossing through there. So a couple of other ways you can use this idea. Thanks for watching. I hope this gets you playing with your embossing folders and looking at them in a different and new way. Let's pull these back in. 1, 2, 3, and 4. I don't have a big desk. I don't know where it went. There it is. Hiding. All right. There we go. Enjoy. Thanks for watching.